I took my granddaughter away from her stepmom, and what I found next left me completely speechless. I never expected retirement to feel so quiet, yet somehow, every evening, the house seemed to hum with memories and unspoken worries. Living in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, I, Helen, had spent most of my life caring for others, first as a nurse and then as a mother. Now, in my late 60s, I thought my days would slow down, but my heart was still tied tightly to my son Mark and his little family. Mark had been through so much, losing his wife Olivia to cancer when their daughter Lucy was just 3 years old, leaving him to raise a 5-year-old on his own. Watching him struggle through those years, I promised myself I would be there for him, no matter what. A year ago, Mark surprised all of us by remarrying Rachel, a woman who had her own little boy, Jake, just 3 years old, from a previous marriage. Rachel had moved back to Charlotte after her divorce, bringing Jake along and quickly becoming part of Mark's and Lucy's lives. She was in her early 30s, quiet but kind enough, and I had welcomed her warmly because I wanted Mark to be happy again. The wedding was small, held at a cozy chapel down the road, with Lucy clutching a bouquet and trying hard to smile through the ceremony. Rachel wore a delicate lace dress and looked nervous but hopeful, and Jake was shy, clinging tightly to his mother's hand. From the beginning, Rachel worked hard to be a good stepmother. She learned what Lucy liked to eat, took her shopping for new clothes, and read her bedtime stories every night. Rachel was patient, even when Lucy was confused and unsure about this new family. The two kids, Lucy and Jake, were close in age and sometimes played together like they were siblings. On weekends, I often invited the family over for dinners in my backyard, watching Rachel bring homemade dishes while Mark played with the children in the yard. Things appeared peaceful on the surface, like a picture-perfect family trying to find their rhythm. Rachel even called me Mom, with a gentle affection that made me feel she was truly trying to fit in. Still, I couldn't shake a quiet worry that crept in over the months. Lucy started visiting less often and seemed quieter when she did. The sparkle in her eyes had dulled, and her once lively chatter had shrunk to soft replies. When I asked Mark about it, he brushed it off, saying she just needed time to adjust to the new home and new family. Rachel admitted to me one afternoon that she sometimes felt like an outsider herself, that Lucy missed her real mother terribly, and even though she was trying her best, she wasn't sure if love was enough when there was no blood relation to bind them. Her voice trembled with the weight of uncertainty. Being a nurse had taught me to read between the lines, to notice the small changes in people that often went unseen by others. I understood that children, especially young ones, needed time to heal and adjust after losses and upheavals. Yet, there was something about the way Lucy pulled away from Rachel, the hesitation in her smile, and the tiredness in her eyes that didn't sit right with me. I held on to hope, though, believing that with patience and care, this fragile new family could grow strong. One warm Saturday, I decided to throw a pool party at my house. The idea was simple: give the children a day of laughter and play, and maybe, in the process, bring Lucy and Rachel a little closer. Lucy had always loved the water, splashing around without a care in the world, and I thought having Jake there too might help ease the tension. I spent the morning preparing fruit salad and sandwiches and testing the pool water, which was perfect for swimming even this late in the season. Mark called me that morning to confirm they would come, and he sounded relaxed, maybe even a little hopeful himself. Rachel had been looking forward to the day as well, he told me. When they arrived, Mark was wearing a casual work shirt and seemed more at ease than I had seen him in weeks. Rachel greeted me brightly, holding Jake's hand, her floral sundress fluttering in the breeze. Jake ran ahead, shouting happily about the pool, while Lucy followed slowly behind, carrying her small backpack and walking with a heaviness that caught my attention immediately. She didn't run to the water as she used to, but instead stayed close to the car, her smile faint and lacking its usual brightness. I knelt down to her level and said softly, "Lucy, it's Grandma Helen. I was looking forward to swimming with you today." She smiled slightly, but it was a smile weighed down by something I couldn't quite name. Jake was already splashing in the shallow end, laughing without a care, and Rachel was gently encouraging him while watching Lucy from across the yard. I noticed the subtle difference in how Rachel's eyes softened for Jake, but seemed distant when they glanced toward Lucy, sitting alone on a nearby chair. Lucy told me her tummy hurt, and when Rachel offered her water and tried to coax her to swim, she shook her head and pressed her hands against her stomach. Mark came over quickly, but to my surprise, his tone was curt, almost cold, when he said, she's just making excuses again. Lately, she doesn't want to join in anything. Rachel nodded, agreeing that maybe they should give Lucy some space, but hearing those words hit me hard. Lucy wasn't a burden. She was family, and she deserved love and understanding, not dismissal. Later that afternoon, while the others were busy playing in the pool, I found Lucy trailing behind me quietly, her footsteps soft and hesitant. When I asked what was wrong, she glanced around to make sure no one was listening and whispered something that shattered my heart. "Grandma, sometimes Rachel is mean to me when Daddy isn't around." Her voice trembled as she shared how Rachel blamed her when Jake misbehaved, gave her less food, and told her she was too fat, while treating Jake with kindness and softness. She spoke of bitter medicine she didn't want to take in nights when Rachel told her she wasn't part of the family anymore. I held her close, fighting back tears, knowing this wasn't just the confusion of a child adapting to change. There were bruises on her arms and scratches on her back, hidden marks of a deeper pain she had been too scared to reveal before. My nurse's instincts told me this was beyond difficult adjustments. Lucy was suffering. When I called Mark to tell him what I had learned and show him the evidence, his shock turned quickly into denial. But when Lucy appeared and he saw the truth in her eyes and on her skin, his defenses crumbled. That night, Lucy stayed with me, safe from harm, while Mark began facing the reality he had tried to ignore. The quiet days of retirement I had imagined vanished. My role shifted once again, from nurse to protector, ready to fight for my granddaughter's safety and love, no matter what it took. After that first night when Lucy stayed with me, the air around our family seemed charged with an unspoken tension that grew heavier by the day. Mark had finally begun to realize what was happening, but denial still flickered in his eyes whenever he spoke about Rachel. I could hear it in his voice when he called, torn between his love for his son and the shock of betrayal from the woman he thought would help heal their broken family. He wanted to believe Rachel was different, that these bruises and tears were misunderstandings or the product of a difficult adjustment for Lucy, but deep down, he was afraid of the truth he hadn't yet fully accepted. I tried to be patient with him, knowing it was a lot to take in all at once, but I also knew we couldn't waste time. Lucy needed safety and a stable environment to begin her healing, and I was determined to provide it. I spent the days after that first confrontation carefully documenting everything, taking photos of Lucy's bruises and scratch marks, noting her mood changes and the little things she shared in whispered, fearful voices. She would sometimes cling to me tightly, her small body trembling as she recounted the moments when Rachel's anger had been sharp and cruel, especially when Mark wasn't around to intervene. Mark and I worked together to navigate the difficult conversations and legal steps ahead, though his exhaustion was obvious. His job as a project manager required long hours, and the emotional toll of his daughter's suffering weighed heavily on his shoulders. He began to adjust his schedule, trying to carve out more time to be with Lucy and to attend to the complicated matters surrounding their family crisis. Yet, every time Rachel's name came up, his frustration bubbled to the surface, along with a deep sadness that no amount of work could erase. Rachel, on the other hand, was cold and distant during those weeks. I didn't see her warmth that I had once hoped for. Instead, she seemed to retreat into herself, her smiles rare and forced. The tension in the house grew palpable, and Lucy's presence felt like a fragile thread stretched thin between people who once tried to appear as a happy family. Rachel was fighting a battle of her own, trying to maintain control in a situation spiraling beyond her grasp, but her methods were damaging and left scars deeper than anyone wanted to admit. During the rare moments when Rachel and I spoke, her voice would soften as she confessed her insecurities about being a stepmother, especially to a child who clearly missed her biological mother. She worried that no matter how much she tried, Lucy would never fully accept her, and sometimes she felt like an intruder in their lives. Those admissions, though difficult to hear, showed me that Rachel was struggling too, caught between love, guilt, and fear. But struggling was one thing. The harm done to Lucy was something I couldn't overlook or forgive easily. The days blurred together as the custody battle began to take shape. Mark, with my support, hired a lawyer who specialized in family matters, and I sat by his side during meetings and court appointments. The legal system moved slowly, but every step forward felt like a victory for Lucy's well-being. She was placed temporarily in my care during the proceedings, allowing her to feel safe and loved without the constant fear that had shadowed her before. For the first time in months, I saw glimpses of the little girl she used to be. Her laughter returned in fits and starts, and she even began to open up about her dreams and favorite stories again. Therapy sessions with Dr. Sanders became a lifeline for Lucy, a space where she could express her fears and frustrations without judgment. The psychologist's gentle approach helped Lucy untangle the confusing emotions tangled inside her young heart, and slowly, the nightmares that haunted her nights began to lessen. It was heartbreaking to watch, but also inspiring to witness her resilience. Mark and I attended some sessions too, learning how best to support her and rebuild the trust that had been broken by Rachel's cruelty. Throughout this time, I tried to be a steady presence for both Mark and Lucy. I cooked meals that reminded them of happier times, tended to the garden that Lucy loved, and made sure our home was a sanctuary filled with warmth and security. Mark often expressed his gratitude for my help, admitting how lost he had felt trying to juggle work, his broken heart, and the responsibility of protecting Lucy. Our family was healing, but the scars would take time to fade completely. Meanwhile, Rachel's attitude during mediation shocked everyone involved. Once the evidence was presented, her facade crumbled, revealing a side no one had expected. She coldly insisted that Jake was her only concern, claiming she had no real connection to Lucy and didn't want to be responsible for her care. Those words echoed harshly in the courtroom and among family and friends, painting a picture of a woman more invested in protecting her own child than in building a blended family. The betrayal was bitter, and it made it clear that Rachel's presence in their lives had been a destructive force. Eventually, Rachel agreed to leave Charlotte with Jake, returning to her home state in Tennessee after the custody settlement. Mark was relieved but emotionally drained, knowing the battle was far from over but hopeful for a fresh start. Lucy settled into a routine centered around love and stability, her smiles becoming more frequent and genuine. Mark restructured his work hours, ensuring he was there for school events, doctor's appointments, and bedtime stories, rebuilding a father-daughter bond that had been strained but not broken. The transition was not easy, and there were days when Lucy's pain resurfaced in tears or silence. But surrounded by the unwavering support of Mark and me, she began to reclaim the innocence that had been stolen. Family dinners at our house became a regular event once again, filled with stories, laughter, and the quiet understanding that, despite the hardships, love had found its way back into our lives. It was clear to me then that family was not just about shared blood, but about commitment, care, and the willingness to stand by one another through the darkest storms. Yet, beneath the surface of healing, I sensed that some shadows still lingered, memories and fears that neither Lucy nor Mark had fully shaken off. There were moments when Mark would receive mysterious messages, and late-night calls would leave him restless. I could see that the battle wasn't over, that the wounds Rachel had left went deeper than physical bruises, and that protecting Lucy would require vigilance for a long time to come. But for now, we focused on the small victories, a laugh shared, a night slept peacefully, a day spent in the sunshine. Each one a step toward a future we hoped would finally be free of fear and pain. As winter crept into Charlotte, the fragile peace we had found began to unravel in ways I hadn't anticipated. Lucy's healing, though steady, was often interrupted by shadows from the past that refused to stay buried. Despite the warmth and safety of my home, I could see the flickers of fear still lingering in her eyes whenever a certain sound or memory surfaced. Each night, she clung to my hand as if afraid I might disappear, and I promised her that I would never let that happen. But deep inside, I knew our battle was far from over. One afternoon, as Lucy and I were sitting by the window watching snowflakes fall softly, she suddenly turned to me and whispered about another moment of cruelty she had hidden until then. Her small voice trembled as she described how Rachel had yelled at her for making noise while playing, accusing her of trying to ruin her brother's day. The details were chilling. Rachel had pushed her to the edge, isolating her further by forbidding her to join family activities unless she behaved perfectly. The thought of a child living under such fear broke my heart in ways I struggled to put into words. The bruises and scratches I had photographed before were only the beginning. Now, Lucy spoke of cold shoulders, sharp words, and nights spent crying herself to sleep, feeling invisible and unwanted in the very home where she should have felt safest. Her stories were not just sad. They were a stark reminder that the wounds inflicted by emotional neglect could run deeper than physical scars. I could see the weight of those nights pressing down on her tiny shoulders, and I vowed to shield her with every fiber of my being. Mark was no stranger to pain either. I watched him grow quieter with each passing day, his frustration mixing with guilt that he hadn't seen the signs sooner. He confessed to me that his work had often been an escape from the chaos at home, but now, that escape felt like a betrayal to the daughter who needed him most. We spent long evenings talking, planning how to support Lucy better, and finding ways to rebuild the trust that Rachel's actions had shattered. It was a difficult road, but one we were determined to walk together. Legal proceedings took their toll on everyone. Rachel's cold demeanor in court stunned me. The woman who once seemed eager to build a family now fought fiercely for custody of Jake, dismissing Lucy as a burden she never wanted. Her lawyer painted a picture of Rachel as a devoted mother to her son, but indifferent, even hostile, to Lucy's needs. The courtroom drama was painful to witness, yet it was a necessary step toward protecting Lucy from further harm. I couldn't help but wonder how someone could hide such a cruel side behind a mask of polite smiles and careful words. Throughout it all, Lucy remained a beacon of resilience. Therapy sessions with Dr. Sanders brought tears and breakthroughs in equal measure, revealing a strength in her I had only begun to understand. Slowly, she learned that she wasn't to blame for Rachel's cruelty and that she was loved beyond measure by her father and me. The progress wasn't linear. Some days were filled with laughter and hope, while others plunged into darkness and silence. But each step forward was a victory in the battle for her innocence. At home, I worked to create an environment filled with stability and warmth. We cooked familiar meals together, planted flowers in the garden, and rediscovered old stories that brought smiles to Lucy's face. Mark adjusted his schedule to attend school events and bedtime rituals, becoming the father she deserved and desperately needed. The bond between them strengthened visibly, a testament to the power of love and dedication in the face of adversity. Yet, as Rachel prepared to leave Charlotte with Jake after the custody settlement, a lingering unease settled over me. There were moments when Mark received strange messages and late-night calls that left him restless and unsettled. Rachel's departure was not the end of her influence. The damage she had caused extended beyond what we could see, hidden beneath layers of manipulation and unresolved conflict. I watched Mark struggle with the uncertainty, knowing that our fight for Lucy's safety and happiness was far from finished. Then, one evening, as the house settled into quiet, a knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. A stranger stood there, eyes sharp and guarded, claiming to have connections to Rachel and knowledge of secrets no one else knew. The words exchanged between them sent a chill down my spine, revelations that hinted at darker forces at play, beyond the family drama we had endured. Suddenly, the sense of safety I had worked so hard to build felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. I looked at Mark and Lucy, their faces etched with both hope and fear, and realized that our story was far from over. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with shadows that refused to fade, and challenges that would test us in ways we couldn't yet imagine. But one thing remained clear: we would face whatever came next together, bound by a love stronger than any secret or threat. And as the night deepened around us, I held on to that truth, knowing it was the light that would guide us through the darkness still to come. After the storm had passed, and Rachel was finally gone, I thought we might finally breathe easy and begin to heal from the wounds left behind. The house, once heavy with tension and fear, slowly started to feel like home again, filled with warmth, laughter, and a sense of safety that Lucy desperately needed. Mark adjusted his work schedule, determined to be present for every small moment, every bedtime story, and every school event that he had missed in the past. Watching him become the father I always hoped he could be gave me hope that their future was finally on a better path. Lucy blossomed in this newfound stability, her laughter gradually returning like a soft melody that warmed every corner of the house. She took to therapy sessions with Dr. Sanders with surprising eagerness, showing a resilience that was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Though the nightmares hadn't disappeared entirely, they grew less frequent, and she learned to trust again, not only in those around her, but in herself as well. It was incredible to see her gradually reclaiming her childhood, the light in her eyes growing stronger with each passing day. We spent countless afternoons in the garden, planting flowers and tending to the small things that made life beautiful. Lucy loved digging in the soil with a tiny shovel, her serious expression betraying the importance she placed on each seed she buried. One day, she asked if the flowers would bloom again next year, and I promised they would, as long as we cared for them together. She nodded solemnly, adding that, just like the flowers, our family would grow stronger every year too. Her words warmed my heart in a way I couldn't explain, reminding me that love can transcend even the darkest of times. Mark and I worked hard to create new family rituals, filling our days with simple joys like cooking together, reading stories, and quiet evenings by the fire. I watched the way Mark's face lit up when Lucy told him about her day at school, how he never missed an opportunity to remind her she was loved and cherished. These moments were fragile but precious, each one a building block in the fortress of trust and healing we were constructing. It was a slow process, but every smile, every hug, every shared laugh felt like a victory against the past. Lucy had grown comfortable sharing memories of her mother Olivia, speaking of her with a mixture of sadness and warmth that showed she was beginning to understand loss in a healthy way. One night before bed, she looked up at me and asked, "Grandma, are we a real family?" Her innocence and sincerity made me pause, and I gently told her that family wasn't just about blood, but about the people who love and protect each other no matter what. "You, Daddy, and we are family," I assured her, "and nothing can ever change that." Her smile that night was the kind that stays with you forever, a quiet promise of the future we were building. Despite the progress, I knew scars ran deep. Mark's exhaustion was real, the weight of the past months leaving traces on his face and in his voice. Yet, he never wavered, showing up for Lucy with unwavering dedication. He celebrated her small victories, stood firm against any lingering doubts, and held on to the belief that love would heal what had been broken. Together, we formed a support system stronger than any pain or fear, determined to protect Lucy's innocence and happiness. The legal battles finally settled, with Rachel receiving custody of Jake and moving back to Tennessee, far away from our lives. The relief was palpable, but the echoes of her presence lingered in unexpected ways. Mark occasionally received strange messages that unsettled him, and late-night phone calls left him restless and distracted. I saw the worry behind his eyes, the lingering fear that Rachel's influence might still cast a shadow over our lives. It was a reminder that healing was a journey, not a destination, and that vigilance was still necessary. Life settled into a rhythm, but the peace felt fragile, like a delicate thread stretched taut across a windy sky. Mark and Lucy continued to thrive despite the scars, and I found solace in the simple joys of family life. The warmth of a shared meal, the comfort of a bedtime story, the quiet moments where love spoke louder than words. These were the treasures that kept us going, reminders that no matter how hard the storm, the sun could still break through. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves painted the world in shades of amber and gold, a knock on the door shattered our calm once again. A stranger stood there, eyes sharp and guarded, claiming to have knowledge about Rachel that no one else had. The weight of his words sent a chill through me, hinting at secrets deeper and darker than we could have imagined. What followed was a cascade of revelations that pulled Mark and me into a web of uncertainty, forcing us to question everything we thought we knew about Rachel and the true nature of the threats she posed. The stranger's presence was a stark reminder that the past was never truly behind us, and that some dangers lurked beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Mark's worry deepened, and I could see the protective instincts in his eyes harden as he prepared for whatever might come next. We weren't just fighting for Lucy's happiness anymore. We were battling to protect the very safety and future of our family. In that moment, as the night closed in around us, I held on to the one truth that had carried us through every hardship. Our love was fierce and unbreakable. No matter what shadows loomed, we would face them together, standing as a family bound not by blood alone, but by unshakable devotion and the promise of brighter days ahead. Just when I thought the worst was behind us and that our family could finally breathe freely, the shadows returned in ways no one could have predicted. Life had begun to settle into a fragile rhythm, with Mark and Lucy finding moments of joy amidst the scars left by Rachel's cruelty. I had hoped that with time, the wounds would heal completely and that the dark chapters of our past would remain where they belonged, behind us. But reality has a way of reminding you that the past is never truly finished with you, no matter how far you run or how tightly you hold on to hope. It started with a message Mark received late one night, a cryptic text from Rachel that sent chills down his spine. The words were vague but ominous, hinting at secrets and manipulations that went far beyond what we had already uncovered. She claimed to know things that could unravel everything we had worked so hard to rebuild, threats veiled in the guise of regret and warning. Mark's face grew pale as he read, and I could see the weight of old fears pressing down on him once more. Rachel's social media presence suddenly exploded with unsettling posts, a chaotic mix of cryptic messages and accusations that painted her as a victim rather than the source of pain she truly was. She spoke of betrayals, of unseen enemies conspiring against her, and of a dark past she claimed had been hidden from us all. It was as if she was trying to rewrite the story, twisting reality to suit her own narrative while dragging our family through a public spectacle of manipulation. The comments ranged from sympathy to harsh judgment, but the damage was done. The quiet wounds reopened for all to see. Mark and I tried to dismiss it as the desperate acts of someone unraveling, but the unease lingered like a shadow in every corner of our lives. Then, out of nowhere, a stranger appeared at our doorstep one cold evening. Someone claiming to have known Rachel far better than anyone else. Someone who carried secrets that made my blood run cold. His words revealed a side of Rachel none of us had imagined. Deeper manipulations, dangerous alliances, and motives that stretched beyond the personal into something far more sinister. It was a revelation that shattered the fragile peace we had fought so hard to build. The man's presence sent Mark into a spiral of sleepless nights and whispered conversations that I wasn't always privy to. I watched him wrestle with fear and uncertainty, knowing that the threats Rachel posed were no longer just about custody battles or family drama. They were now about protecting our lives from unseen forces that threatened everything. The past had returned with a vengeance, and the family we had worked so hard to protect now faced dangers that lurked in the shadows, unseen but deadly. Lucy, innocent and resilient as she was, felt the tremors of this new threat too. Though she tried to focus on the happiness we had nurtured, the tension in the air unsettled her in ways she couldn't fully understand. Some nights, she would wake with tears in her eyes, frightened by nightmares that had no clear source but were filled with shadows and whispers. I held her close, whispering promises of safety and love, hoping to shield her from the darkness that threatened to encroach on her fragile world once again. Mark and I realized that we needed to be stronger than ever, not just for Lucy, but for each other. We began preparing quietly, gathering information, seeking allies, and reinforcing the walls around our family's sanctuary. Every phone call, every message, was scrutinized with growing vigilance, and every unexpected visitor was met with cautious suspicion. The threat was real, and ignoring it was no longer an option. Yet, even amidst this rising storm, I clung to the hope that love and determination could overcome the darkness. Our family, fractured and battered, had proven its strength time and again. I reminded Mark and Lucy that no matter how deep the shadows grew, the light of our bond could never be extinguished. We had fought for our safety, our happiness, and our future, and I was determined that we would continue to fight, no matter what lay ahead. As the night deepened, with the cold wind whispering through the trees outside, I stood by the window watching over my family. The path before us was uncertain and fraught with danger, but I knew one thing for sure. We would face whatever came next together. Our story was far from over, and though the shadows threatened to swallow us whole, our love would be the light that guided us through the darkest nights.